Back to the country, and we are seeing what's happening in terms of just pursuit for justice on very many fronts. There is what's front right and center right now on the issue of seeking justice for Albert Ojwang, but also there are many other issues that we are discussing. The rights of the people when you're arrested, the rights that you have constitutionally when you are to be taken to court, what happens when you're in police custody, what happens if you're a suspect, at what point are you arrested, should you be arrested when you're just being a suspect, or should you be arrested after conclusion of investigations, and so on and so forth. We have an advocate who's joining us, Suleiman Bashir, who will take us through this. Suleiman, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Very well.
Thank you for having me.
Karibu sana wakili.
Asante.
As we begin this conversation today, is there?
Day of the African Child.
Okay.
June 16th each year. In 2021, Antoinette Toto Sithole spoke at the 45th anniversary commemorating the ceremony for the Soweto uprising, which happened in 1976. Her brother was the one who was in that famed photograph. Unfortunately, he lost his life. And she said, any ordinary person can change people's lives. How does that land with you?
I think my interpretation of that is that every person, I think all of us have something to put in. We all have an effort to put through, at least to be able to contribute to the improvement of the African child and every other child.
Yeah.
So it is about every effort which counts. I think it translates to that. Yes.
Yeah. And that sometimes somebody who didn't have a name or a brand suddenly becomes a symbol for African children everywhere.
True. And it's a very interesting one for me because I have gotten my firstborn in I think he's now this is his 8th day.
Oh,
so,
congratulations.
Asante sana. So when we talk about the African child and such quotes, it inspires me maybe to have more, but I feel how we need to all come in and improve the lives of all African kids and all other kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, you don't want to take paternity leave?
I don't know. That's in Kenya. It's a question I ask often.
Right.
You'll see somebody be like, oh yeah, my baby is 3 days old. I'm like, why are you here?
What does leave mean?
You stay at home.
You stay at home.
Yeah. You stay at home.
Look, he's like, what concept is that?
Yeah.
Are you seeing African men to our men?
No. What is staying at home? Does that mean you don't leave the confines of the company?
Yeah, you stay at home and bond with and help raise
You
the
don't
baby.
work.
You don't do anything?
No. You do things in the home.
Oh, you do things
You
at
don't
home.
do work.
Yeah.
Like kazi ingine.
Yeah,
you
like,
work in the home.
Yeah, like now, because you couldn't work from home, he just basically decided, maybe let me go and share this.
Okay.
But I've been doing that, I always do that from 5 p.m.
Yes.
up until 8 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Oh,
Well,
when you are night
congratulations.
shift.
Yes.
Well done.
Asante sana.
Pole
Yeah.
kwa kukuamsha after night shift.
Asante. But it's a very good experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think when we talk about African children, Kenyan children to be specific, we want the best for them. For future generations, we also want the best for ourselves, even as adults, right? And for our parents, and the whole chain. But there seems to be a lack of, what should I call it?
Other than protection.
Yeah,
or goodwill.
Goodwill and protection for African children, but just for the Constitution and upholding its fidelity seems to be a really big problem. What are some of the biggest red flags you've seen as far as Albert Ojwang's death? There's the obvious one, which is that he was killed in police custody, but then I think that I can think of about 10, 15 more, but from a legal perspective, those red flags as far as Albert Ojwang's death.
Well, let me point out that those particular red flags start right from the point of arrest. When you look at how he was arrested, when you find police officers who go all the way to Migori and they visited his local home, they asked for him, they took him away without his without the company of any other party. They took him to a local police station, as we are told. They later on drove him all the way to Nairobi. So sometimes when you look at the whole essence, it beats the very purpose of having a police station within every locality.
Right.
There is no police station that is in Nairobi that is superior to any other police station outside Nairobi. So the first issue of concern is the aspect of moving someone from the place of locality or from that particular jurisdiction all the way to another county. That is number one. Secondly, it is the aspect of when you go to that particular place, you are supposed to report to the local OCS. He's supposed to document the specific police officers who have come from outside that county. So the practice is, if you're a DCI officer and you go to Migori and you want to arrest me and I'm in Migori, the first thing you do is you report to the local police station. the OCS is supposed to take down your identity. He's supposed to give you about 3 or 4 police officers who will accompany you to go and arrest that particular person. When you arrest that party, you are supposed to come back to the police station again for a fresh booking. So if we have had all these particular documentations, I think it will be somewhere in terms of how this particular gentleman, the deceased, has been arrested. The other thing is that when you arrest someone, you are supposed to properly inform, let's say, the father or the mother or whoever you find in that particular homestead, your actual identity in terms of your 3 names, if need be your police service number, and from which particular station you're coming from, whether it is the local one or one from outside. Now, the gentleman, we are told, has been arrested, he's been moved, and granted, let's say they've moved him to Nairobi. When you bring him to Nairobi, you are straight away supposed to take him to that particular police station, in as much as it is irregular, because we are supposed to have kept him in that particular local police station. As I've said, there's no one police station that might be superior to the other one. So when you come to Central Police Station, you are supposed to be at Central exactly if you were driving for 6 hours, in the next 1 minute after 6 hours, you are supposed to have booked him at the police station here in Central. So you put his details down, you give him a new OB number, and you are supposed to detain him if that might be the case. Then you are supposed to allow him the opportunity to have his father or relatives or any other party visit him. The other bad practice that we have seen, especially with this particular incident, is the aspect that his telephone, I think, has functioned in a specific time. Then later on, I think it was taken away from him. So once it is confiscated, sometimes they switch it off or they take it away from you in a way that will make it impossible for him to be in touch with his loved ones. Now,
is your phone supposed to be confiscated?
No, you see, you are just a suspect. When you're being arrested, you are a suspect. And when you're a suspect, you are entitled to all your other rights and everything that you possess, except something that will be an impediment to the administration of the very justice. For example, if you have a knife or a gun, those are the basic things that can be taken away from you, or that is because that is what we can say that will frustrate the aspect of administering justice.
Suleiman, before you continue on the rest of the illegalities that happened once he was in custody, is there any legal basis for somebody to be transferred from one county to another like he was?
No, there is no legal basis of moving one from one country to another. But the issue that has happened is not just confined to the National Police Service. It is also a practice by the EACC and other agencies. So what they do, there's a documentation or a report that is done in one station here. They send officers from this particular center, be it Integrity Center or be it from DCI, depending on the kind of complaint that is filed. When they dispatch the officers and they visit that local station in that particular county, they come to tell the person that we are investigating an issue about this, a criminal conduct about this particular party, and we need him in that station. And the justification they might give is the aspect of resources and materials and witnesses that might be available in another locality. So if there are such justifications that are watertight, if we follow the rightful procedure in terms of documenting everything, and we give you this particular suspect and you move him or her to that particular station, it will not affect his or her right in one way or another. So I think in this particular scenario, that particular process has not been complied with. But those are the scenarios that might posit the aspect of requiring you to be taken to a different police station.
It was presented as an argument by DCI boss Mohamed Amin when he spoke in the Senate, because the senators kept asking, so why did he have to be transferred from Homa Bay to Nairobi? And he said, one, the complaint was made in Nairobi. And two, so the officers that then were investigating this particular matter were based in Nairobi. Then they established that he is in Homa Bay. Then they went to Homa Bay and they reported to the local station. They arrested him, took him to the local station, and then they transferred him to Nairobi. Justification for this is the particular nature here that we are dealing with of, digital suspect of digital crime or digital crime is the complaint, is that we can then take you anywhere. But I think the bigger justification that Mohamed Amin was using was the resources. The witnesses, everything will happen in Nairobi. It is easier for us to transfer the one person to Nairobi than to keep shuttling back and forth between Nairobi and the Homa Bay local police station, which is a recently established, upgraded police station. It still doesn't have a DCI office, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense?
Well, that will make sense, in a perfect setting whereby there are so many witnesses. It's about moving one party towards the other for the sake of convenience. You know, the whole essence is to administer justice not just to the suspect, but also to the complainant. So the complainant equally has rights in as much as the suspect does. So where the police receive a complaint, and there are so many witnesses who are based in Nairobi, they might make up that particular decision to move you. However, let me just put in a point of caution. I've been in practice and in a scenario where we have written formally to the DCI director on a different matter. We were trying to have a complaint lodged by my client at the DCI headquarters. He responded formally and referred us back to the local police station. You know, when you look at it that way, that particular practice in my client's case makes a lot of sense. He has pushed us back to the local police station and told us, can you go and file this particular complaint in that particular locality? So one of the questions that begs our mind, or what we can ask ourselves is, why would the DCI entertain a complaint in respect of an offense regarding a party who is outside Nairobi? Because the police can equally tell you, look, you can book this particular complaint here and we can file, or we can transfer this particular file to that particular police station. That is one way or another. But in this particular scenario, as you have put it, where the DCI talks about so many witnesses being in Nairobi and the logistic challenges in terms of moving the witnesses and the complainants from Nairobi to other counties, it will make perfect sense to move the suspect from where he is to a place, for example, in Nairobi, but that will not and is not supposed to limit any of his rights. He's actually supposed to have all the rights that he's supposed to enjoy, both in Nairobi and outside Nairobi. Another thing, Eric, that I keep saying is that when you look at the Constitution, in terms of how we are supposed to be arrested, it is just similar to the American movies, whereby you are watching a movie and American arrests a party. Then you're told you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and shall be used against you. You know, these are all words that are under Article 49 of the Constitution. So the big question is, why can't we just implement Article 49 of the Constitution so that we live like these developed nations? That is my big problem with them. When you look at that particular provision, it is so juicy, it is so sweet, it covers every person's right. So we all just need to implement it, and we will not be having problems that, such as the ones that we're having at the moment.
We're still doing the red flags, but just before that, why was the Directorate of Criminal Investigation involved in the first place? Defamation is a civil matter. How was the complaint made? Are we privy to how the complaint was made? Why the DCI was involved? When does the DCI get involved?
Look, Mariama, there's the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Law that was enacted in 2018. When you look at sections 22 and 23, they talk about the aspect of defamations, the aspect of publishing false information that in the eyes of the law might be regarded as the objective to maybe malign or disrepute another party. Where that happens, that particular act or law is the one that has criminalized these kind of publications. If I do a bad publication about you, you are the one that the police can use. The police can actually use that against you and impute a criminal conduct against you on that particular basis. So we may not say it is civil as such. I keep saying, and I did a publication on this, that the biggest problem started with our parliament in 2018. I think it was around May, June, when this particular law was passed and enacted. That is our biggest problem. If we want to solve all of these particular issues, we need to repeal or amend specific provisions. And when you look at that particular act, the penalties for defamations of this particular type or false publications, that's the actual word that has been used in that particular section, is a 5 million fine, or I think a 10-year jail term. Those are very hefty sentencing or penalties or fines, and I think they were geared towards, in the first place, frustrating the ideal users of our social media and other platforms. And when you look at section 2 of that particular act, it talks about what you call the computer systems. When you look at the definition of computer system, it fits in everything that we are using, from our telephone number, from our mobile devices, to everything that you have in this particular studio.
Every gadget.
Every gadget. So for as long as we have that kind of an act, we might find ourselves in what we have found with the late Albert, and the other day it was about Rosenjerry with respect to section 16 in terms of unauthorized, I think, access or unauthorized interferences. So the police keep using these particular provisions, and the parliament has given them that latitude to use these kind of provisions against us.
Right. So then why the DCI and not regular police officers?
Very well. So the DCI is a specialized unit that can initiate investigations in respect of certain complaints. They do not have a specific, distinct mandate or specific complaint because, you know, they are part of the police service. So if you go to them and you file a complaint about lands or a complaint about employment issue or a complaint under that particular act, there is no problem with them initiating investigations. It is a police service. In fact, it's regarded as a specialized police service that is even supposed to do these kind of jobs better than the other the ordinary administration service. So there is no harm in one lodging a complaint with the National Directorate of the DCI or any other DCI office for that matter. And there is also no harm with you lodging that particular complaint in any other local police station. Yes.
Back to the red flags. We had gotten, I think, as far as he's in Nairobi still.
Yeah.
You said as soon as he gets here, should be booked.
Correct, yes. Minus the number of hours that he was traveling.
Yes.
He was supposed to have been booked straight away. Then he was supposed to have been allowed to have access to his parents, his lawyers, any other party. I know these are not my words. These are the words of Article 49. You have the right to have your legal representative or any other representative to access you. Then I think things went mute. There is a lot of inconsistency in terms of when he was booked up to when this particular time that we were told that he passed on. There are those things that are red flags again. Then communication comes from the National Police Service in the morning, which tells us that the cause of this particular death was as a result of this particular inmate banging himself on the walls. You know, all these are inconsistencies and they are putting the police within the center in terms of them being responsible for this particular death. So, funny enough, for as long as you continue from point one up to the next point, the inconsistencies become more and more glaring. They will never end. In fact, in this particular case, there is no one good thing about the police in terms of how they have handled this particular issue. And as we have the media digging more into this issue, for as long as we have in the CCTV footage that's coming out, you know, all these issues are putting the police at the epicenter in terms of the misconduct and how they have behaved in this particular case. And I will even tell Kenyans that this is one case. These issues happen every day, every night. For those of us who are in legal practice, the other day it was the IPOA chair who talked about in the House, in our parliament, that there are so far in the past 4 months about 20 or so deaths in police custody, right? And you know, we are functioning as a normal state still. I think that was supposed to have caused a national discussion. You cannot treat Kenyans who are dying in police custody as a normal issue because Eric and Mariam and Janet, in a perfect setting, and when you look at our constitution, when you have a problem, you are supposed to go to the police station. When you are in fear, you are supposed to go to the police station to seek for security, and even you're supposed to enjoy your freedom within the compounds of a police station. But we are at a time whereby our rights, our limits, and everything that is so close to us gets limited if you find yourself within the compound of a station.
Yeah, it's become intimidating. So you're right, there's a huge blur with regards to what happened when Albert was supposed to have been booked. In a quote-unquote perfect scenario, what was supposed to have happened?
Well, he was supposed to have been brought to Nairobi. Granted, they take him to Central Police Station because ideally the DCI doesn't keep parties within the headquarters. Most of the time, they take you to either Muthaiga or Central Police Station. So they were also supposed to have put in an OB number, and they were also supposed to have detailed the specific police officers who have taken you from Migori. They were supposed to have detailed what time you are moved from Migori, by how many police officers, and by their identities in that particular report. Then they were supposed to have indicated the specific offense for which you are being booked. Then you are supposed to, if it's not a big offense, or if it's a misdemeanor, for example, everything in our country, every single offense, you are supposed to be granted a reasonable cash bail or police bail for that matter. So and that's, you know, a bit discretionary on their part, which they continue abusing. And the person who is supposed to put you on that particular bail is the officer commanding station. He's the one who is in charge of that particular station. So let's say they have decided not to release you. Albert was supposed to have been kept safely in that particular station together with others who are supposed to have been arraigned in courts of law the following day, or people who are within his status, those who might have been arrested for offenses A, B, C, D, and who might be awaiting an arraignment. And the justification or the rationale behind this is that all of you are suspects. and the law you'll be able to face the law the following day. So in other words, you are supposed to have been granted access to that particular facility in a peaceful, humane way up until morning, when you are maybe supposed to have recorded a further statement or be taken to a police station. And again, if I take you back to a court of law, and if I take you back to, again, Article 49. Article 49 talks about being arraigned in a court of law not within a period that is not more than 24 hours. You know what our police, what they normally do? You are arrested at 8 a.m. in the morning. They keep you up until tomorrow at around 8:30 a.m. Then they take you to court. But that is not the provision in terms of a constitution. You are supposed to be arraigned in a court of law not later than 24 hours, meaning you're even supposed to take me to court of law in the next 1 hour. Because courts of law are ordinarily functional between 8:30 and 5 p.m. Courts are functional. You can take me to Makadara, I can take plea, but that doesn't happen. So ideally, which is what I keep...
With the exception of now weekends and holidays,
yes,
which I think has also been abused. So in the case of Rose, for example,
yes,
making sure you arrest on a Friday so that then the weekend is not, not functional.
And Mariam, you see, even if you're arrested on a Friday, let's say at 11 a.m., you should be taken to a court of law before 5 p.m.
Yep.
But they take advantage of how that particular provision has been drafted. You know, they're just working within there not more than 24 hours. If it doesn't fall on a weekend. And that, again, takes you back to our whole service. What kind of service are we talking about? Are we having a police service that has been put in place to deliberately frustrate, harass, and intimidate you, even as they try to function or align themselves within the constitutional provisions? So the other red flag beyond that is that now the late is no longer with us and he could not be taken to a court of law. If that particular death has happened, that particular death again was supposed to have been recorded formally with the cause of death, the time, and if a medical report could be availed in terms of a doctor that particular same evening, because these are all within the hands of the National Police Service. That's what a perfect police is supposed to have done. In other words, by morning, we were supposed to have had a recount of all the events in terms of when his arrest has happened up to the time of his passing.
Right. Okay. Just hold there because I think there's a caller.
Yes, there is a caller. Gadare, I think from Kitale. Kadere. Kadere is back. It's good to have you back, Kadere, from Kitale. What's your question for Wakili Suleiman or your comment? Morning, Kadere.
My name is Kadere from Kitale. Wakili, habari asubuhi.
Mzuri.
Mimi niko na swali. Alafu ni comment. Kwanza nauliza wewe, mimi nauliza kulingana vile umesema defamation. Huyu OCS kitaalamu inafaa shtakiwe na defamation crime ama namna gani? Sote alidanganya IG kumwambia kwamba nani alikufa akiwa hospitalini, kumbe alikufia ndani ya seli. Kwa hivyo inafaa shtakiwe na makosa ya kutoa defamation act ama namna gani? Hapo utanijibu. Alafu pia mimi nasema serikali bana, hii si mzuri sana. Imeua mtu mwenye hana hatia, mtu kikosi hata kulingana kwa size hatia yake hatujajua aliposa nini. Kenye kiko tu wameua. Alafu mzazi wake mimi naona anaumia sana. Huyo mzazi baba naona anaumia sana. Mtoto wake kuenda kuuawa, alafu mnashika samaki wadogo ndio mnasema ati mmeshika. Hiyo tu ni kupambaza. Serikali inatupambaza because hao askari wadogo wanaweza hata pelekwa huko wapigwe transfer kwa station nyingine na wafanye tu kazi wazidi kuua wananchi. Lakini wakifuta kama wakubwa wakina ID hawa wafute hao DCI hataenda mahali tutamuona. Hiyo ndio tunataka hawa watu wafutwe tuone kwa vitendo. Lakini kusimamisha watu wadogo nothing there. I want to know from you wakili, hiyo swali langu tafadhali. Asante.
Thank you.
Asante. Let me first clarify that we are not talking about defamation. We are talking about publication of false information. As we all know, defamation has been decriminalized in our country. But what happened is that the parliament has sneaked in something similar to criminalizing defamation once again using different words. So even as we discuss this, in as much as it might seem as if we are discussing the aspect of defamation, however, the actual words on that particular law that has been passed by our parliamentarians is publication of false information that are so much geared towards disreputing or putting someone's character and integrity into disrepute. You see now, when you look at that particular provision, and you read it, it says that when you look at the publication, or if you publish false information knowingly, which you are interested in disreputing the respect or the character of another party, again, the question is what you might regard or what you might interpret as putting your integrity into question, or someone else's integrity, or some words that will disrepute Mariam's integrity or name, is not how I'm going to perceive it.
It's relative.
Yes, it's relative. Now the police come out to abuse that. A complainant will just go record a statement, say that Latif has posted this particular information about me, and I do deem this as an information that is targeting me. But again, there are certain tests that they are supposed to administer. For example, the actual words, the harm, the identity, they don't do all that. And you know, the problem comes again from the act. That particular act is a 56-page law, but I will regard it as one of the most retrogressive laws that we have in our country at the moment. 56 pages, but so harmful. Anything that you are doing with your gadget is all captured in a 56-page document.
And will that cyber Crimes and Computer Misuse Act is something that we've talked about, but we need to find a way to fix and to work backwards. And how do we initiate, change for that? Because everyone raised red flags. Okay, a good number of people raised red flags even before it was passed into law. But I want to get back into what Kadere was asking. The OCS commanding that police station, what's his culpability? DCI, what's his culpability? Then there's unverified, and we'll call, unverified CCTV footages from us, at least on our end, that do seem to contradict the statement that DCI, gave on the floor of Parliament under oath. Is that culpable if indeed they are found to be different? If there is a discrepancy between what he said and the actual events.
To begin with, if every police station in our country, most of them do have an officer commanding station. And the essence of putting up an OCS there is for him or her to be accountable on all the happenings within that particular station. If we are talking about Nairobi, Central Police Station, it is the OCS who is accountable, and there's a reason why he's the officer commanding that particular station, whether it is day or night. If his shift,
there or not.
Whether he's physically present
if his
or not.
shift has ended, he must know which police officers will be on duty and who will be briefing him in the morning. And if if anything happens, he's able to sit down and tell us, I have put in office, or in these particular officers were in operation during this particular time. That is why that's why he's referred to as the officer commanding station. Right. Now, beyond him, for example, in Starehe, within which Central Police Station falls, is the OCPD. Again, that is the person who is supposed to be in charge of these particular police stations within this particular Starehe center. So when you look at Central Police Station, it is crystal clear that the OCS has a lot of explanation to offer. He can either tell us what happened that night, or he can tell us who is supposed to tell us what has happened that particular evening. If he tells us who was in charge and who is supposed to be held accountable, it will make sense. It will make a lot of sense to us. Unless, or else, he tells us what has happened that particular night, whether he was briefed, whether he was out of the station or not. Because ideally, even when, as advocates, we have clients who are arrested late in the evening and we walk to a police station in a bid to bail him or her out, we are told, let's first call the OCS. And we want to hear on what he's going to say about this particular issue. The agenda or the essence is that nothing happens in a station without the OCS's knowledge. That's one thing. Secondly, that puts the OCS in an issue. Secondly, when you look at how the police operates, if something happens within a station, from the top in command, which is the IG, he's supposed to at least get some briefing following the chain up to the OCS level. But we have had the police spokesperson issuing a statement. And the police spokesperson doesn't issue a statement without having a green light of those who are the top bosses in a police setting.
Right.
The IG, the spokesperson does a statement. He doesn't wait for investigations. He doesn't do anything. Does a statement for the PR sake. He thought the people of Kenya are going to consume this particular knowledge. But that is what has been happening all along in all other cases, remember. This is just a very peculiar case whereby the media has given a lot of attention, which is very important. we are talking about hundreds of Kenyans who have been dying in such circumstances, which is why it's important in a country, when you focus on one particular case, it's able to change the narrative in terms of how all these particular issues happen. Yes. Yeah. So there was also a serious issue with the spokesperson and his IG in terms of the kind of communication they have issued.
Right.
You are not supposed to feed the people of Kenya again with false information. You understand? They are charging someone with posting false information. And that is what has allegedly caused the death of that particular young man who was arrested on the basis of posting that.
I've never thought of it that way, in a sense of you are saying it's because he posted false information. You're the first one to regurgitate.
And you are feeding the false information to the entire people of Kenya again. So that is another issue. So if that's what I'm saying, you know, Mariam,
DCI, I mean,
my slight fear with this issue is if we continue this way, even our president will not be in office. I'm telling you the truth. If you follow this particular accountability chain, it cascades down up to the CS for Interior, the PS, CS. There's a reason as to why we have these particular levels. We must have someone calling for the shots. But again, we have had again Kenyans talking about the complainant. The complainant, according to the IG, was the Deputy Inspector General of Police. But yet again, people are coming out and they're saying, we need him out. Then ask yourself, how do you remove the Deputy Inspector General of Police? It is the law that provides for that.
The procedure.
Yes, there are two ways. Either which is a word I'm going to use, that in a perfect setting, you expect him to step aside, allow for investigations to be undertaken, investigations shall be completed or concluded. If he's clean, he comes back and assumes that and continues discharging his mandate, and that would increase the confidence of the people in him. The other aspect is his removal. Under Section 17 of the National Police Service Act of 2011. It provides that a petition is supposed to be placed before the National Police Service Commission. They vote on that particular complaint. If they find some veracity in that particular complaint, they will make some recommendation for the president to form a tribunal, and that will start the beginning of his process of removal. But this is a very weighty issue. It's an issue of public concern. We do not have the time and the luxury to start doing petitions to National Police Service Commission for them to convene meetings, do ABCD. I can tell you even the little moves that we do see at the moment is because of what you guys are doing in terms of casting the light on this particular issue. That is why now that particular option is not there, because it will be time consuming.
But that option isn't there, and he's likely to refuse to step aside. So what happens?
You see, there's an essence as to why we have the law in place. The other option will be for IPOA to conclude its investigations, and if they put him at the center of this particular matrix, that will be an easy thing to do in terms of lodging or filing that complaint or petition with the National Police Service Commission. You see, Janet, why we are in this particular hard scenario, it goes back to the question of institutions. If we had a National Police Service Commission that is very efficient, that could do these kind of issues within minutes or hours, an ordinary Kenyan would have already lodged that petition with them. It will have been acted or processed, and this, depending on their findings, the gentleman will be home and dry at the moment.
There's another way. You know, we've had how many Inspectors General of Police since we have had many.
Yes.
Only one has served a full term. Okay? All the others have left somewhere, some point during their term. The term of an IG of police is defined, but they have left before. Without tribunals, without all this and the other, they just, find a way of stepping aside. Politics. There's political pressure that's applied on these officers to step aside. And that's what we've seen with all the others, even DCI bosses and so on and so forth. So there's that option as well.
And that is the option we've seen, Erika, whereby the president has been coming out to the media, tell us that I have received a resignation letter from the Inspector General, which letter we've never even seen some of us, because these are political appointees in one way or another. But again, as Kenyans, we are talking about the life of a young man. We are talking about a grieving father and a whole country that is in such a situation. Is it important for one man to stay put? Has that been our practice all along? Is it our practice that even when we find a CS or a PS in the midst of an issue to say, I'm not going to move myself out of this? And what does that say? It tells you that he must be having some blessing or confidence from the appointing authority. If he was accountable, properly accountable to whoever he reports to, I think the gentleman would have paved the way. But there's a reason as to why he's staying put. It's because of the confidence that he must be enjoying from somewhere. But how are you going to that particular office. You know, as a council, I go to county commissioner's office, I visit the regional commissioner, I go to the DIG's office. I've been to the current IG's office when he was the DIG. But it will be difficult for me to sit down in the current DIG's office unless there's a clarity on the current issue. Because that particular ethics is in question. I do not believe that I'm going to him to address a very important issue of concern as the situation is. So the aspect of saying, let him pave the way, let him step aside, is also good for him. It is about him getting the confidence, because who knows, this might be the future Inspector General of our country.
You know,
I would certainly hope not.
My big fear, by the way.
You said you certainly hope not.
I would certainly hope. Because if you don't have the integrity to step aside, you're the complainant in an ongoing matter, and the person you lodged a complaint against is dead in a police station or at the hands of police officers, and you can't step aside, I would certainly hope that that is not our future Inspector General. But go on, Eric.
My fear, as you watch all these things and as you see all these things, is a structural issue, right? We may, as a public, push for the blood of people, and we may actually see the blood of people. But those people will just be scapegoats. And the structure will not be sorted. We may see today, people are calling for the DIG Lagat to step aside. He may today come and step aside. People may say, we're calling for, you know, the prosecution of the police bosses. We are saying, yeah, the officers who are involved need to come out and tell us. We may have a clear report of what happens in this particular one case. But it is a structural issue. What has led to where we are, where, you know, even the IG of police can issue a statement under his hand by the police spokesperson, and it says whatever it says, it's a structural issue. We need to go back and ask ourselves what happened to our police reforms. And I think there's a gentleman called Johnson Kavuludi who led the police reforms at that point as the first chairperson of the Police Service Commission. They vetted all officers, starting with the senior-most to the junior-most officer. All of them appeared before the Kavuludi Commission and were being vetted. You are found to be suitable to continue serving. You are unsuitable to continue serving in our service. It was part of it. What happened to that? And that leads us to an issue. But let's hear, there's a call on the line. Who do we have, Philip? Brian from Embakasi. Good morning, Brian.
Morning. Only one question for Aziz.
Yes. Brian, switch off your TV, please, or radio.
We need to have an incident report.
Brian, tutarudi kwako ukizima TV ama radio.
Right.
Yeah, it's a structural issue, and it's an issue here that, you know, says if we have allowed politicians not to allow the police to be reformed as it should be. We have seen a weakening of the Police Service Commission, where the power to appoint an IG of police and the DIGs and the boss of the DCI was taken back to politics. We have allowed our IPOA to be completely neutered, that it is powerless, it's toothless. Now we blame IPOA, we say this IPOA thing, oh, this and the other.
They don't do anything.
It's politics that allowed this to happen. We dropped the ball on our police reforms, Wakili.
Eric, you know,
Brian amezima TV. Wacha tumsikie kwanza. Brian, good morning.
I have one question for Aziz.
Yes. Wakili.
We need to have an incident report to whitefly these cases that are happening in Kenya. That's why the SCS is responsible for all these things that are happening within the area of working. So what is the input in terms of what the course of action to make sure that we have this report, so as to have written escalation and follow-up to avoid such what in the future? Thanks. Have a good day.
An incidents report on what is happening. Also follow up on that.
All right.
See if you can respond.
There are a few things I wanted to point out. In the High Court in Malindi, there's a judge called Justice Ruben Nyakundi. One time, he made a ruling. He said, and he cautioned the police. He said there's a very bad practice in Kenya whereby the police will arrest you, bring you to court, and start investigating or looking for evidence. So he's actually cautioned the police against such practices. And I think that would be a very important recommendation in terms of how our police service operates. That's number one. When you look at the High Court in Nairobi, it has talked about what happens in the question of police operations during protests. The court had to intervene and tell the police, look, you need to demonstrate or portray your name tags, you need to be in police uniform, and you need to have some identifiable identity in terms of how you operate. That is not being complied with. When you look at these kind of issues in terms of what is happening, it tells you that even as we look at the whole concept of police reforms, we have deviated from our constitutional dictates. Because when you look at the courts of law are there to give us directives in terms of how we can have an orderly society. Right. Remember, if the police arrest you, they cannot take you anywhere else other than the courts. That's why the courts are trying to even assist the police. They're being told, look, when you go to demonstrators, go deal with them in a humane manner, have your identifiable tag, remove masks, be in uniform, then arrest them, then bring us. You know, the court is trying to assist them with the procedural compliance. The courts are telling them, look, when you're arresting them, when you're arresting anybody, look for the evidence first. Don't just arrest.
So to me, that speaks to the fact that it's more about intimidation than the rule of law.
It really is. Let me give you a case example. You know, I act for a client. My client was arrested because of he was indebted to somebody's. He had a business transaction with someone. Then someone loaned him a few millions, and he could not pay it back. Now, what the gentleman did, he went to court. The one who loaned him, the financier, went to a police station. He met some DCI officers. He told them that this gentleman has my money and is not paying me back my money. And this is a purely civil issue. Remember, it is between two individuals. There is no law in Kenya that criminalizes that kind of transaction between these two people. So the DCI then, what they do, they send officers, they arrest my guy. Now, this is my client. When I say, so he's arrested, he's taken to a police station, and he's kept in police custody, and he's not allowed to have access to his telephone. Right. So he could not reach out to me. I ended up learning about this particular ordeal later on when I visited him. So come evening, he was removed from the station, taken to where the complainant was. He suffered some beatings from the complainant, and he had to promise and assure the complainant that he's going to pay back that particular debt. Yani unachukuliwa from the station, unapelekewa kwa, you know, for Kenyans and the rest, this is like now a very surprising issue. Yeah. This is a day-to-day happening for the ordinary mwananchi and for the people. So, amechukuliwa, he was taken to the complainant's house. Beaten properly by the complainant and his people. And he had to promise them that he's going to pay this money back. In the morning now, he was released on certain conditions.
And then the police took him back to the cell.
Yes, then he was released in the morning. I sit down with him. Do you know he was too scared to even have me as his counsel? Because he realized that the scenario supersedes or overpowers any usual person, even his counsels or anybody. Because he knows that he will again be arrested, and even he might be tortured more and more. That's why, if you ask lawyers, especially those who are litigants within the criminal courts, the kind of harrowing experiences of their clients that they can share with you would actually awaken the people of Kenya. So this is the thing. If you look at IPOA, it's called the Independent Police and Oversight Authority. The UK has a similar office. It's called, I think, the Independent Office of Police Conduct. They have empowered it, and all complaints in UK, if you are within, let's say, London or anywhere, and they have a problem with any British or Welsh officer, you just go complain. It's a very independent entity with its own tools of investigation. And do you know why the IPOA is able to investigate this particular? I'm just trying to draw that example. The reason why IPOA is able to investigate the current case is a bit special. It is just because of the media that the IPOA officers or investigators were allowed to access Central Police Station. Remember, the evidence IPOA is supposed to rely on is ideally within the cell settings or the station settings. Tell me how an investigator from IPOA, without the police cooperation, is able to access and collect that evidence.
In about 5 minutes, I know we'll transition to your world, but we have Joe. I think you said Philo. Joe from Nakuru. Joe, good morning. Do you have a question or comment for Wakili?
I have a question and a comment.
Okay.
There is a direction which was given by Office of Director of Public Prosecutions. According to that direction, it is IPOA was supposed to carry out the investigations. And for me, I am wondering, and I'm also asking the panelists whether is out of order for the establishment of the police force to carry out the investigations.
Right.
At the same time, see mutually not to be negligent on their responsibilities. And we have to be waiting for IPOA to come in and sort out issues.
Okay.
And meanwhile, I wonder, how can IPOA and Office of Public Prosecutors be effective in ensuring that operations within the police force are executed
All right.
without losing a point like the responsibility lies actually with the establishment of the police force.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Initially, there were a lot of issues with IPOA in terms of how they even undertake investigations, whereby when we have a police officer misconducting himself, the internal affairs unit could initiate investigations, the DCI could internally initiate investigations, and IPOA could also run parallel investigations. That ended up frustrating IPOA's bid in terms of how they were undertaking investigations. So let's say IPOA will write a letter to the DCI or the Internal Affairs Unit. They will receive a response saying that we have launched our own investigation. So what happened? The matter found its way in court. I think it was on May 5th that the High Court in Milimani made a decision that said the question of investigating police misconduct it's a specific preserve or reserve for IPOA alone. Not Internal Affairs Unit, not the DCI, not any other entity is supposed to undertake such investigations. The essence is to ensure that we're able to have proper accountability over police. And the essence is to take away any investigations from anyone associated with them, just to give it a very third party, someone like us, a very ordinary person who is in a public office, who is not in uniform, who we expect him or her to do for us something better.
Brings us back into, if we do not fight for our police service to be reformed,
You will keep seeing
the
this
Police Service Commission should have civilians at the height of the Police Service Commission who employ and they participate in oversighting police. IPOA is Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Civilians again, just so that civilians are able to check on these institutions. If we don't push back for those ones to be independent,
we'll see a repeat. I'm glad the guest has clearly explained due process. Somebody here is asking, I would like the council, Suleiman, to repeat the name of the act which he mentioned, which has created controversy and discrepancy. That's what they're saying.
The Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act, right?
That's what they meant, If Lagat resigns and goes home, the electorate might welcome him as ours and elect him. Very complex.
Right, very true.
Yeah,
it's
very,
possible
very
that we would see him, even if he does go home. Yeah, in 2027, he'll probably be on the ballot.
That's true. We need to end it here, unfortunately.
All right.
Sorry,
what's
Suleiman.
coming up?
Maybe we host you again.
We need to, because I really wanted to know what justice they can pursue right now as a family, or whether they have to wait as well as the rest of the country. But what's coming up on Your World is absentee fathers and its impact on society, crisis or cultural shift. That's going to be coming up with Winnie, Lubembe, and Kali Mary on Your World in just a moment.